Jake Crain, Daily Wire. It's college football smothered and covered, powered by Locked On.
You are Locked On College Football, smothered and covered, with your host, Barrett Sallee. Your one-stop shop for everything college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in. Thank you for making this your first listen. We are brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's right, Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. My dude, Jake Crain, Daily Wire, in on a Wednesday show.
Yup.
Mr. Crain, it was a long night. The Braves did what the Braves did. The debate was the debate. So I appreciate you hopping on early this morning. How are you, my friend?
Look, I'm doing good. I hedged my emotions. I put a little coin on the Padres on the run line. It's minus 1.5 at plus 130, and then took the Mets on the money line. You can see it on Crain and Company. I promise you, I'm not just saying that because it hit. Probably going to do the same tonight. But I tell you, it was an eventful night. It was a long night, like you mentioned, but not shocked by the Braves struggling in the postseason, and we'll see. It was with all the injuries, amazing they even got there, but it's probably going to end tonight, and the worrying can stop, and I can just go back to worrying about how much Auburn sucks.
Well, I'm right there with you with that. It would help if the Padres didn't trot out Cy Young. That's generally speaking not going to help. But anyway, it's the fact that they're there is remarkable. So let's talk a little bit. Let's just take a spin around the country. There are a few topics I want to get your opinion on, and Michigan being number one. Now, you have to babysit David Cohn, former Michigan quarterback, every single day on Daily Wire. Someone's got to do it. Might as well be you, because you're the mature one on that show.
Yeah, which is horrifying.
Which is like the bar's pretty low for that.
Yeah.
But they still can't pass. They still like the forward pass is a complete myth to them. I think when Davis Warren was named the starter, my initial thoughts was, holy crap, how bad is Alex Orji through the air? Because we knew he could run, but in fall camp, how bad was he? Well, we've seen it, and yet they still won a top 15 game. They still jumped out to a huge lead on Minnesota. Wasn't necessarily his fault that they needed all kinds of craziness at the end, including an onside kick that was debatable. What do you make of Michigan right now? Because to me, it's like they might be able to fight their way to 9-3, but I mean, they have to get a little better. But how much better?
Well, look, I believe, multiple things can be true at once. I think they made the right decision because Davis Warren was turning the ball over and saying, look, if we're going to be a one-trick pony, we need to make sure it's a hell of a trick and just kind of embrace who we are. It's like,
speaking of Auburn, there you go. They can't pull
it's Auburn, it's I know we'll get to that, but when I look at this Michigan team, and I think Sherrone Moore made the right choice when it comes down to making that decision after the Texas game, to get just on the ground, throw your now screens, throw your slants, maybe take a shot or two down the field a game just to show the defense that you're willing to do it. But at the end of the day, you got to be who you are. And this is the best chance that Michigan has to be able to set the tone and the pace of the game and to score points, right? Because that's the goal offensively. Now, does it put you at a disadvantage if you get behind, especially 2 scores? Yes, it makes it incredibly more difficult to be able to come back, including if there's minimal time left on the clock when you're operating this type of way. But that doesn't mean it wasn't the best decision for this team moving forward. It's funny. You look at a team like Army. I think their passing game at Army is better than the one at Michigan. And they're a triple option team that has a little bit of a different flavor than what Air Force does. And Navy's more similar to Army than they are to Air Force. But I think it's the right decision by Michigan. Here's what and this is why it was so surprising to see Minnesota come back like that, because that game went perfectly for Michigan. You would think when they get up big on somebody with the new clock rules where it doesn't stop after a first down until we get under 2 minutes for the half and then the end of the game, that they'd have them exactly where they want them. They can just keep getting 2nd and 7, 3rd and 3 and get first downs. But Minnesota was able to find a way to come back, and that was kind of shocking to me. You think it would be the inverse, but this Michigan team, to answer your question, Barrett, they're not going to win the national championship. I think even a lot of Michigan fans, you're coming off an undefeated season. You did win a national championship last year. Would agree with that. But I think they could get to 9-3. I think if they get a couple bounces and are able to control the clock, that they could win a big game that they're not supposed to, whether that be Oregon or whether even that be at Ohio State. Because I still have
it might have already happened.
About Ohio State. It might have already happened against USC. So yeah, 9-3 sounds about right, which would be a good year, I think, for Sherrone Moore in his first year. But one thing we've talked about with David Cone is, and I get, that they're a big promote from within organization over there, and it's worked. How you don't realize, it's kind of like what we talk about with Hugh Freeze, that, man, maybe we don't have a quarterback that can throw it. You're coming off a national championship. Yes, you lost Jim Harbaugh, but go get somebody out of the portal. I mean, Michigan's more attractive right now than it's ever been, but I do think that Sherrone Moore made the right choice in deciding to go this way.
Yeah, I do too, but you're right. I think there's a lot of similarities between Auburn and Michigan in a lot of different ways. But I think for me, looking at this, it's almost like Alabama, that the or let's just say this, the preseason sort of wiggle room that Alabama had is now different, obviously with what happened last week. Mm-hmm. But Michigan's sort of in the same place to me, right? 3 straight years in the playoff, new coach, a lot of roster turnover. And 9-3 is okay. That's not going to last, right? No. I think after what we've seen, Michigan fans and the Michigan administration are going to expect the playoff after this year, basically every season. They did it 3 straight years. Obviously, it's a massive reset, but they've seen Sherrone Moore go beat Ohio State. They've seen him find a way to beat USC. There are positives throughout his brief tenure, but that's going to ratchet up this offseason. If they go 9-3, and this is what we said about Kalen DeBoer before the season, if they go 9-3, fine. Now, we're not saying that about Kalen DeBoer now, but to me, Sherrone Moore is in a spot where he can really create a legacy for himself next season. Yeah. But if things don't go well next season, that's going to be bad. Like, to me, this is almost like a mulligan year.
Yeah, it's a year of understanding, right? Because think about it. Michigan had that build up with that group, that core group of guys that it finally paid off all their senior year and J.J. McCarthy's, third year, and they were able to win it. Not only that, but go undefeated. And you let them taste the filet mignon. Remember, Michigan hadn't won a national championship in a long time. Yeah. So that fan base they've had success, but they hadn't tasted the filet mignon. They haven't drank the French wine in a while. And once you give them a taste of the filet mignon, they don't want to go back to a flank steak, right? They don't want to go back to a McDouble, even if it's with fries and a McFlurry. They want the filet mignon. And they'll give you a year to say, all right, well, we understand all you lost, and there's a lot of turnover, and it was a transitory period, quote unquote. But it's like Clemson. You let them taste the filet. Now, not tasting the filet isn't good enough, right? Yeah. So, and it's an honor to have that kind of expectation. It's something you should take pride in because you have reached the mountaintop. And going into next year, Michigan fans are going to expect at least make the playoff and show us that we're building close to like we were under Harbaugh, where we can see the path, right? We can see the blueprint of how you're building it as it goes. It's just going to be interesting to see what they do at quarterback. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see an old legacy quarterback make a move from another big institution to maybe come back home. But I'm not going to spill the beans on that one yet.
Yeah, I think I know where you're going with that. Let's go one state south to Indiana, not Indiana, which is 4-5-0.
Cignetti, you lining up that Cignetti?
We're not. We're gonna line up South Bend, but we're gonna take a little detour. Sidebar: have you seen Indiana's schedule the remainder of the season?
Yeah.
They might make making the playoff is not out of the question for that team.
And what I said about 3 weeks ago, and this is all. I've always liked Curt Cignetti. I don't think people realize how good of a job he did at James Madison. And if Lane Kiffin doesn't go to Florida after Billy gets fired, which may be this weekend if they lose to UCF. I don't think they're going to lose to UCF, but it may be this weekend. Everybody, if Lane Kiffin ends up not going, I'm telling you right now, if you want a guy with swag, if you want a guy with that borderline arrogance, the guy who would go to Florida and turn UF into FU, a guy like a Steve Spurrier that had success, like an Urban Meyer that had success, like a Dan Mullen that had success, because I think there's an archetype of coach that Florida needs. They don't need the humble behind-the-scenes guy that's going to walk old ladies across the street and start a nonprofit. They need a guy who's going to go in there and tell everybody, damn it, we are Florida, you are not, and that's how it's going to be. We should dominate. That is Curt Cignetti. He literally went on the court right when he got the Indiana job from James Madison and said Purdue sucks, and oh yeah, Michigan and Ohio State suck too. If you want a guy that's going to talk the talk, and he may look goofy a little bit, right? He may wear kind of the high pants with the white sneakers, but he's got that cool dad swag. He's got that. Why is he bumping, Drake and Lil Wayne and Rick Ross in the middle school carpool line as he's coming to pick his kid up after school kind of swag? I'm telling you, watch out for this guy because he's going to make Indiana cool. You know how hard it is to make Indiana cool? So
Michael Penix couldn't even do that.
I know.
Well, You talk about dad swag in the carpool line. I'm just going to say I was blasting Kilo Ali with the windows down yesterday, and I don't apologize to. And our kids go to a Christian school, so some of those.
I love it. Make no apologies.
Yeah, it's so we'll go to South Bend. When Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, I was like, okay, y'all don't count them out. Don't count them out. The offensive line was still figuring itself out. You still didn't know what you were going to get from a healthy Riley Leonard. They beat Louisville. I don't think there was an appreciation for Louisville. They stopped. They going into that game, they didn't give up the big play, and they had the big play offensively. Notre Dame beating Louisville is a big, big deal, and I think as the season goes on, it will be more and more attractive to the College Football Playoff Committee. Am I crazy to think that this Notre Dame team can go 10-2 and make the college football playoff?
I don't think 10-2 gets them in because they lost.
See, I do.
Illinois.
But it would include a win over USC, though.
It would, but like, who's your second loss?
Well, yeah, that's true.
So,
if it's not a loss to USC, then that would be two signature wins, but also another bad loss.
Well, yeah, but like again, if you lose Louisville, we talked about Louisville the whole year. I mean, and again, remember that's not an ACC loss for Louisville. Like Louisville is still in the thick of it in the Atlantic Coast Conference that has teams from California in it. Put that math together, but that's a story for another day. Here's where I'm at with Notre Dame, Barrett. Let's just futuristically the chance to make a playoff. They go 11-1 there in the playoff. I don't care if they lost to Northern Illinois. I think if you go 10-2, any variety of 10-2, right, then you're not going to make the playoff because outside of some cataclysmic thing happening, with everybody else, like it just turns into absolute carnage, which there's a possibility that it could.
2007 happened.
Yeah, especially with no divisions now, right, in college football where it's kind of a different map and a different schedule. But if you're Notre Dame, you really needed Northern Illinois not to lose to Buffalo. You really needed Northern Illinois not to lose to NC State. Now that loss looks even worse. Like if Northern Illinois would have cruised through and ran through the MAC and had a chance to be a Group of 5 playoff team that and make it in the playoffs as a Group of 5 team, okay, we can talk a little bit. Maybe that looks better, and maybe A&M beats Missouri and looks good, and that win continues to look better and better. The committee wants Notre Dame in. All right, let's not beat around the bush. Sure. They will do whatever they can to let Notre Dame in. But I don't think with that schedule, because I'm going to tell you what, they got to play Army and Navy too now. And if you look, what worries me and scares me about on the field Notre Dame, and they have to do it now because Riley Leonard was a mercenary hire coming over, is they are having to run him at a crazy rate, right? Yeah, the passing game was better, and he threw for 164 yards, and they were able to make explosive plays. He also led the team in carries. So with an injury history, I just wonder, since we're in week 6 of the college football season, and he's having to carry that much of a load, can he make it to the end of the year? Because Marcus Freeman and Denbrock and them got to do it. You can't afford to lose another game. Like there's no tomorrow, right? It's kind of like Ole Miss a little bit, not to the extreme, because obviously Kentucky and Northern Illinois are on two different frames here. But that was just such a bad loss, Barrett, that now I think you have to be perfect. I think you have to be perfect the rest of the way, because there's no conference championship game to say, hey, Northern Illinois, early in the year, they snuck them. But, hey, Notre Dame just won the ACC. This is where it hurts you, to me,
that's
worst.
true, but there's also a chance that being idle for a week and letting everybody else beat each other up and letting some dominoes fall might actually help them. It's a fascinating.
It's a narrow fascinating path.
Yeah. It's a really interesting dynamic for this first year, the 12-team playoff. Before we take a break, game days at Cal, Miami's there. I'm such a believer in Miami. I'm 100% did a 180. I thought Cam Ward was a stat monster. I didn't think Mario Cristobal would be able to manage a team that has all these stars and all this experience. Am I crazy to think that Miami actually might be good enough to not just run through the ACC, but in terms of Major League, win the whole effing thing?
If they can realize on defense, right now you are not good enough to stay in man the whole game and not change. If they make that adjustment, because with their personnel, and that was the one worry, right? What was the one worry about Miami's defense coming into this year? It was the secondary. Now they're about to get Ruben Bain back, right? With which a great pass rush can hide an average secondary. The offense with Cam Ward and Restrepo, that connection, I don't know how they don't have an NIL deal with like AT&T or Verizon or somebody, because there's not a better connection in the country. And there's some that are really good. I'm not saying it's the best. It is one of the best between those two. And then, you've got the other weapons. I like their tight ends, their offensive line. Damian Martinez, I want to see him be a little bit more explosive. It feels like he's gotten a little too big, but he's still a really good a runner of the football, and he's a heavy runner. Cam Ward is incredible. I think he's outside of Jalen Milroe, the best quarterback in the country right now. I know he had a couple turnovers against Virginia Tech. Sometimes the quarterback is going to turn the ball over, but he makes so many wow plays during a game.
Yeah, exactly.
And does so many things that surprise me. If Miami's defense can figure it out, because, even going back to South Florida, Barrett couldn't throw it from me to this wall and had guys open. So at some point, Miami is going to have to make the decision. If they can win the ACC like this. I really think they can. Now with Clemson and even, Louisville, if they get there or whatever, it could get interesting if Cam Ward has an off night, right? I'm still
a believer in Clemson. Because of that defense.
Well, yeah, I am too, and it's amazing how much better you look when you aren't playing Georgia. It's like, it's amazing how much better I look when I'm not standing next to Ryan Gosling. It just tends to make you look better. So when it comes to Miami, you've got to be a complete team to win a national championship. And right now, I think there's a lot of questions on that defense, but I think there are fixable things enough to let that offense go out there and operate and eat. So I don't think you're crazy, Barrett, but if there's a team outside of the Big Ten and the SEC that you're like, all right, this team can win a national championship, you have to have Miami up there. But watch out for this Cal team. Watch out for this Cal team. They got some freshman wide receivers and a quarterback named Mendoza, who happens to be from the crib, right? If you're Miami. So I love the over in this game. But yeah, Miami's a problem. They're a problem for sure.
We'll take a break. When we come back, we will talk a little bit about those Kentucky Wildcats, because they made a statement. He's Jake Crain. I'm Barrett Salee. It's College Football Smothered and Covered. And of course, we are powered by Locked On. Today's show brought to you by Game Time. You know Game Time. You love Game Time. They get you your tickets for any single game. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater. You get a great panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guaranteed. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find a ticket with a better price. Game day ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Game Time. Download it today. What time is it? It is game time. All right, bringing my dude Jake Crain back in the mix. Yep. Last thing before I let you go, I know you're a busy man getting ready for Crain and Company on the Daily Wire.
Yeah, I still don't even have my first dip of the morning yet, so it's
Wow,
it's a
I caught you
process.
real early. Caught you real early.
Yeah,
Knowing
I
you,
try and
that's
wait a
like
little
a
bit longer now. I'm
not a
maturing.
boy, not a boy. You're maturing, are you?
Yes.
I'm
No.
not.
No, I'm
I'm
not.
not at all. Kentucky is. That's what we call a segue in this business.
That's great.
Kentucky's maturing. Um, I'm of the belief now, like getting Brock Vandegrift in the rushing game, more zone read, more designed run. He's thick. Yeah, he's tall, but he's thick, and we saw that against Ole Miss. We saw a little of it against Georgia. I got a lot of grief because I put Kentucky 6th in my SEC power rankings, right? It's all about how teams evolve, especially in this day and age of the transfer portal. Sometimes you don't know what you got, right? And same thing in basketball. Sometimes it takes 2 months to figure it out. This Kentucky team's legit. I don't think Georgia was an aberration, and I don't think the Ole Miss was, too, because they came in, they punched him in the teeth. Ole Miss got back up. They punched him in the teeth twice, and then they kicked their head on the curb when they were down. It was impressive, and I think that's the start of something really, really good for Mark Stoops.
Is Kentucky, Barrett? I don't mean to ask you questions on your own show,
No, it's cool.
but is Kentucky the SEC's version kind of Michigan? And is Kentucky's offense better than Michigan? If Kentucky and Michigan played on a neutral site, Barrett, who wins that game, you think?
Kentucky, because they have two better receivers and Key and Brown. And
I agree. I agree. I don't think people. There's a couple things, and look, if you go back and I saw I even led the show for this yesterday. I had so many South Carolina fans messaging me saying, Jake, why isn't South Carolina getting any respect? Kentucky's getting all these accolades, and we beat them 31-6. And I can understand why South Carolina fans would be a little bit frustrated, but Kentucky not only played Georgia close, they won a big game. Right. So now people are looking back at that South Carolina game and saying, maybe that's an anomaly. Because if you go back and watch it, there was a lot of plays break down that South Carolina was able to score on. Like it wasn't clean. It was Lenore Sellers running around, finding somebody in the scramble drill. You got to give South Carolina credit for that. I'm not saying don't respect South Carolina, don't give them credit, but that game didn't go how Kentucky has to have it to go. The Georgia game was clunky, it was ugly, it was down and dirty, and it was not sexy. It was the four walking across the bar around the bar thinking she's an 8. That's what it was. But it worked for them, and they almost beat Georgia. Exact same thing against Ole Miss. Right? The exact same thing. It was an ugly game played on Kentucky's terms. There was a one-score game going in the fourth quarter, and they gave themselves a chance to win, and they won the game. So to me, if South Carolina, not to change subjects, wants to get your respect, beat Ole Miss this weekend. And now we'll look back and say, wow, you beat an Ole Miss team that a lot of people were high on before the year, and you beat a Kentucky team.
You smoked a really good Kentucky team.
And you lost a controversial game to LSU. That'll get your respect back. Because don't forget, game day went to Columbia the week after South Carolina beat Kentucky. So let's not act like people weren't giving South Carolina any of their flowers. They shipped half of ESPN to Columbia after y'all beat Kentucky. So you got to win a big game. But to your point, this is why this Kentucky team is dangerous. I don't think people realize they've got 3 top 100 picks on that front 7. Like this defense is Oxendine and these guys. They can ruin your Saturday. And that's what they did to Ole Miss. I felt like Ole Miss was unprepared in that game, which is shocking to me considering they haven't won anything ever. And this is supposed to be the anointed team. And you would think it'd be a faceless opponent situation. But if Kentucky can get you in their web, can get you in their trap, and can get you to play at their pace, and it just slows down, and they would rather go mudding, right, than taking the Lambeau in the city. That's the type game they have to have. So you got to give them credit. But to me, the thing that stood out the most, Barrett, because I was in it, coaches in Division I for over a decade, it is so impressive to me that Mark Stoops could get his team to get up like that again after getting their guts ripped out by Georgia and losing. You were so close. You caught every break you needed to break. And having to go back and watch that film on Sunday, it rips your guts out because you know the result. You know what's going to happen. And then you have to go through a week of practice. You got to do inside drill on Tuesday. You got to do perimeter drill on Wednesday. You got to do 7-on. You got to do 1-on-1. You got to go through the special teams, the walkthroughs, right? But sometimes going on the road, Barrett, is a beautiful thing.
Yep.
It narrows your focus. Well, look at Alabama. This is a great example. And I'm not trying to be too long-winded here, but I really want people to understand this point. Alabama played really sloppy, I think, from a penalty and turnover standpoint against Western Kentucky and against South Florida.
Oh, yeah.
When did they play their first clean game?
Wisconsin.
On the road at Wisconsin. And then it carried over, and they're like, all right, this is how we got to do it. And they did it mostly against Georgia. So kudos to Kentucky. I know that was a rounded answer, but they're
no, it's true.
They're a problem. Like, they're a problem if you fall in their trap. You get out ahead of them, you better get off to a good start against Kentucky. And that's not easy to do. You better get off to a good start against Kentucky.
Well, no, the Alabama comparisons, they're exactly right. I mean, obviously Alabama's way better, but still, I mean, you got to find yourself.
You got to be yourself.
They did.
You got to be yourself.
Yep. Jake, appreciate it.
Barrett,
Jake Crain
best,
of
buddy.
Lady Ballers fame. Today's show brought to you by our good friends at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, want to look at some play-by-play, get the latest stats, it's all there on your FanDuel page. It's the same page that you place your bets on. Right there, it's ultra convenient. We'll get you started. They'll get you started with $200 in bonus bets. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 wager. It's a deal you can't resist. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 wager. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com. I really appreciate my good friend Jake Crain for joining us. You can catch Crain and Company on the Daily Wire every single afternoon. Former South Alabama assistant coach, too. That you can see, he knows his stuff. Hey, thanks for making this your first listen every single day. Hey, for your second listen, go check out my good friend Spencer McLaughlin. Locked on College Football does a great job. I feel like I have to say it. Go Braves, please. For the love of my sanity, go Braves. Till tomorrow, have a good one. Might be a little on number tomorrow if the Braves win, spraying some champagne just because of one postseason game. But that's how it is in this day and age. Got to celebrate everything you can get. Have a good one. We'll talk to you tomorrow.